Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 15, Episode 100. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us this Wednesday, Steelers Nation. Dave, exciting triple-digit episode for Season 15, getting ready for the 2025 season to officially begin. That'll start technically next Wednesday. Legal tampering begins on Monday, and things, you kind of feel like it's about to get started here, Dave. Kind of this calm before the storm. The storm may be on the horizon. You see it moving in. It's going to start ramping things up and hopefully get some questions or some answers to these long-standing questions the Steelers have had, chiefly around quarterback, which remains wide open, but hopefully moving towards a resolution. So should pick up soon. Dave, how you doing?
Happy Wednesday. Doing great. And we are getting closer to the start of the new league year and coming out of the combine, starting to see some movement of some things happen around the league with some notifications of either flat out releases ahead of the start of the new league year or players being told that they'll be released after the start of the new league year with like June 1st designations. I think even Jeremy Fowler reported this morning that Javon Hargrave will be a post-June 1 release and is healthy coming off his tricep injury. And we've talked a little bit about him, so he'll be available start of the new league year. We sit and wait what's going to happen with the Steelers quarterback position. Today is Justin Fields' birthday, by the way, so will they do something there with them? You still got all the major media types chiming in on which way they think that's going to go. 2 franchise tags have been designated. Boy, I think that's the lowest amount since, was it 2006 or 2016? It was one of the two.
It was, I think it's the early 90s. I think there was an error from Spot Track on 06. I don't know. It's in a long time, a lack of franchise tags.
So only 2 franchise tags. One of those obviously going to T. Higgins, the way I thought that would transpire there. The other one going to Trey Smith of the Chiefs. Was the other one, but only 2. That's a low amount for today's NFL. Davante Adams officially released by the Jets, so he's a street free agent now and can obviously sign before the start of the new league year. So we got quite a bit of things to keep us busy today to talk about. You've written a couple of great articles on some free agent predictions and all ahead of the new league year. So dealer's choice, where would you like to start?
Well, let's start with some of those players who have been released or have been announced to be released at a later date start of the new league year, and Davante Adams leads that list. He has officially been released by the New York Jets. That move announced on Tuesday, and he hit the transaction sheet as well. So he's a free agent right now, can sign at any moment. And of course, with Pittsburgh having a receiver need and Adams being now officially available, those thoughts easy to connect. I've expressed interest in Davante Adams. He's on my wish list. We'll talk about later in today's show. The reporting is he would prefer to go out west, though. And of course, we always have known that Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams have been something of a package deal. So I don't know the likelihood of him coming to Pittsburgh. I doubt the Steelers are considered front runners for Davante Adams, but he is really, I would say, the number 1 receiver in free agency now that T. Higgins has been franchise tagged.
Yeah, he's definitely up there. And look, he obviously missed time last year, but he still put up good numbers last season. In totality, I think he's still got at least another good season left in him. Would the Raiders take him back? Would the Raiders go the direction of both Eric? I mean, because those obviously, I would think that Davante Adams and Aaron Rodgers both, if they had their druthers, they would like to play together. one more time. Is there a possibility that both those guys end up in Las Vegas? What other destination out west could there possibly be? Because obviously the Rams going to stick with Matthew Stafford. I mean, what else? What else out west is there?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I haven't gone through all the possibilities. I think Rodgers and Adams playing together is going to be less of a story and less of a possibility in 2025. They did it for 2024, didn't go great. You can't always keep those guys together, and Rodgers simply may not have the market out there. It would be maybe a little awkward and kind of funny to see Adams go back to the Raiders, but it's a new regime there, of course, new head coach and new general manager. So it's a new look Raiders team. Could Seattle be in the mix? Could Arizona make a play? I'm not really sure, but and I don't know exactly how far west does he want to go? True West Coast or just Rocky Mountains? Who's to say? But Adams, I'm sure we'll have several suitors.
Yeah, and look, he had that interview with Kay Adams late last season, talking about Mike Tomlin as a guy that he certainly would be willing to play for. You have to think the Steelers are inquiring about him at this point ahead of the start of the new league year, and with him technically being available to sign with any team at this point. And obviously the next couple of days will be interesting to see if any other wide receivers are cut loose by their team, ahead of the start of the new league year, or obviously right after the start of the new league year. But as we've kind of thought all off season here, this team is going to add at least one veteran wide receiver here fairly soon. It feels like. I mean, they only got 5 wide receivers under contract at this point. Possibly even 2 veteran free agent wide receivers, and they obviously could go into the draft and add another one that route as well too. And one of those 5 receivers under contract is a guy in Roman Wilson that is barely played any downs in the NFL, and 2 others. One of them was futures guy, and the other one was Brandon Johnson, who was on the practice squad last year to go along with with Calvin Austin III and George Pickens. So the list of another interesting thing to watch, I think, is Chris Godwin and Tampa Bay. As we mentioned, they pushed back his the date of his void to try to work things out there, and you would have to think that if he had his druthers, he would like to play at least one more season with Tampa Bay, and because they had a pretty good thing going over there overall with Baker Mayfield and the wide receiving core that they had over there when everybody was healthy and all. So that might be one less guy in Chris Godwin and that hits the free agency as a wide receiver over the course of these next several days if they're able to work out. Are you expecting them to work something out with Chris Godwin, the
The
Bucks?
the tone has been optimistic, but nothing has been done yet. So if I had to guess, I would say he'll return to Tampa Bay, but it may be complicated by the fractured ankle and just concerns about his health, but also the Bucks know his health situation better than any other team right now, which probably lets them chart that course more effectively. So short answer is, as things stand today, without me putting on too much of a Bucks hat, not really following that situation super closely, I'll guess he resigns.
Yeah, I will as well too. And I guess the other kind of bit of I wouldn't say news. It's more obviously speculation, but a New York Giants beat writer thinks that Darius Slayton is definitely going to test free agency. And the way this list has dwindled, he certainly should, it seems like. And he could become one of the prime guys along with Davante Adams when it comes to free agent wide receiver market here over the course of the next week. And the report from him was that the Steelers will have interest in him, and he's a guy I think that last off season before the Giants kind of redid his contract and added some incentives in there. Guy that we thought the Steelers might have interest in, and obviously didn't play out. Christian Kirk is another one. Going to be interesting to watch transpire with him still under contract. Might he be dealt? But you start getting past those guys, the Davante Adams, Darius Slayton, Christian Kirk. Where does it leave you on? Let's suppose Chris Godwin ends up staying with Tampa Bay. Where does that leave you as far as guys that might become available here at the wide receiver position?
Well, we'll talk about that list. I still think there's a pretty
Okay.
good number of names, and that doesn't consider potential other cut candidates or trade options. Cooper Kupp, even though I'm not super
Mhm.
excited about Kupp, but he's still out there. Tyler Lockett, could maybe Cortland Sutton become available? I think there's still a healthy number of veteran names for a team that, again, just needs a number two receiver. They don't need to have that guy that is that number 100 target type of receiver. Yeah, Slayton himself had an interview that said he expects to have a pretty active and robust market. I think it's a great fit for Pittsburgh. We'll talk about that more probably in a little bit, Dave. He's not going to be the most expensive guy, but not going to be this, dumpster diving Van Jefferson, Scotty Miller 1 year minimum contract. It's going to be a healthy
Right.
contract for Slayton. I think Pittsburgh would be attractive because they are at least a playoff competitive team. Yes, they're not the Super Bowl contender, but Slayton's only made the playoffs once in 6 years with the Giants. He's had horrible offenses, horrible quarterback play. Pittsburgh, I think, would be an upgrade over that. He's great in the locker room. Was the Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee for the Giants this season. He's been a playmaker. He's got vertical speed. Especially if Russell Wilson were to sign him, if that's the outcome of this thing, if Wilson returns, that I think especially pairs well with Slayton's skill set. But even if Fields resigns, I still think Slayton makes a ton of sense.
I do as well.
And so on Adams, just to button up that point on Davante Adams, if he had interest in Pittsburgh, would you have interest in Davante Adams coming to Pittsburgh, Dave?
Oh yeah, yeah. I think he's definitely got at least a one season left in him. Now, is he a $20 million wide receiver right now? I don't know about that, but I mean, the market's going to be thin-ish depending on available trade candidates and anybody else that might be cut here pretty soon. So yeah, absolutely. And look, I think he would be a good, George Pickens talked about him, that recycled interview that we recently talked about, how George Pickens has looked up to Davante Adams and, would like to, obviously, wouldn't mind probably being a teammate of his. And I think Davante Adams would be a good, kind of not that at this point, this far along in George Pickens' career, you know, the guy, as I said, Tigers usually don't change their stripes. But if there's anybody to come in that has been around the league that might be able to get through to George Pickens and at the very least say, look, man, just you might be aggravated not getting a contract right now, but just go out there, keep your head down, have a good season, and you're going to hit a huge, huge payday, next March there. Maybe Davante Adams is the kind of guy that kind of can get through to him here. But yeah, I do think Davante Adams does have at least one good season left, and this team needs to have a better wide receiving crew than they had last year.
Yeah, just simply for injury protection. Pickens goes down last year. Everyone knows the story, but he goes down, misses 3 games. The offense really starts to tank. So they're going to add I know it's a broken record, but they're going to add a better receiver. Adams would be great. I think he goes somewhere else, but if he wants to come to Pittsburgh, I'm all for it.
Yeah, I agree.
Let's flip over
I'd like to
from
see him add both of them, Adams and Slayton. I don't. I mean, obviously, it depends on price on both those guys, but this team has cash and cap space to use, and they Omar Khan said they got to get some playmakers.
Yeah, I get that, but this is a team that ran not a lot of 11 personnel last year. It's a multiple tight end offense, and so I think it's going to be hard to convince and to get the value to sign both those guys. But if one of them can come to Pittsburgh, I'm happy.
Yeah. Yep. Agreed.
Let's go from Darius Slayton to Darius Slay, the Eagles cornerback, or really close to being former Eagles cornerback. He's going to be released by Philadelphia. He's 34. There's certainly an age concern. Maybe only one more year to play in the NFL seems to be his expectation and game plan, but he's still an effective corner. Big play Slay. There's a connection with Terrell Austin from their days in Detroit. Slay's talked about wanting to play for Mike Tomlin if he wasn't playing for Nick Sirianni in Philadelphia, which he's no longer doing. He's got the Super Bowl ring. He can bring that kind of culture and mindset. Is that a guy Pittsburgh should pursue to be a cornerback starting opposite Joey Porter Jr.?
Well, big play Slay how many big plays did he actually make last year? I don't think he had any interceptions. How many passed? 13 passes defensed, and he played. I looked at it the other day. The lowest amount of defensive snaps that he's played since I think his rookie season, way back in 2013. He played just 699 defensive snaps, almost 700 overall. I'm not surprised based on where the Eagles are at, with their corners and all like that, and the pay that Slayton was or Slay was set to make. Not surprised. The rumblings have been that he was going to be released, so that obviously is going to come to fruition there. Does he have one more good year in him? Can he kind of be a bridge guy and help fortify your defense to go along with guys like Corey Trice Jr., and we'll see what happens with Dante Jackson and potentially a draft pick in the room. Yeah, it makes sense as long as you don't have to break the bank to do it. I would imagine the Steelers, if the Steelers did have interest in him, I would imagine they would try to do a 2-year deal with him and see if they could at least get him through year one, only make the guaranteed money in 2025. What are you thinking about? I don't know, 7-8 million, something like that for him?
Sounds very Patrick Peterson 2.0 in the contract structure. So I think about that makes sense. That probably sounds right for Slay, who again seems like, not that he guaranteed he'd only play one more year, but he wants to play at least one more year. So, but it's a 2-year deal to help manage the money aspect of it. I get that point.
And you could obviously still go out there and get a guy like Hobbs, who you talked about since the middle of February, to go out and help this team as well too. The Steelers should have interest in him. So you got a guy that old, a guy that's on the backside of his career. But I mean, we just talked about Davante Adams still getting it done at his age and all like that. Could you, if you manage his snaps correctly and with the intention of at least getting him through the first half of the season, first 2/3 of the season, and can get that out of him to come in and be a good mentor and help that defense. I think you could at least get 3/4 of a season out of him. A guy like him, I think you would also expect to miss a couple of games, just because of his age. But depending on how the rest of the market shapes out, and look, there's going to be moving and shaking going on here, probably around the league, and the free agent. We'll have to see who actually becomes a free agent by the start of the new league year. As long as you didn't break the bank on him, sign him to a 2-year deal, kept the guaranteed money to 2025, you could make sense of a deal like that.
And Slay, I think, is doing the media rounds today, so we'll see what he has to say about his impending release. Here's where I come in on Darius Slay. Do I have some level of interest? I do, but it's not my starting point. There's a ton of younger, really strong corners that are out there worth examining first. We'll talk about them probably throughout this week. Charvarius Ward, DJ Reed, etc. Those would be the options I would look at first. And then if I missed out on them, Slay would be maybe a later in March kind of plan B, plan C type of thing, where that door to draft and still get younger is going to be open, but Slay can be that 1-year stopgap that will hopefully help team culture and just kind of give you that veteran presence in this pretty young cornerback room overall. So wouldn't be my starting point, but not discounting it either.
And look, once again, these the market for cornerbacks or the selection of cornerbacks in free agency might be a little bit better than wide receiver by the time this thing flushes out here. But you're still going to have to pay some of these guys. If you want to go after a guy like Charvarius Ward or Carlton Davis or maybe even DJ Reed, you're going to have to spend a little bit of money on those guys.
Right, but as you said, they got tons of cap space and the need to spend some cash, and that's a good position to do it for some good players.
Feels like Mike Hilton might be coming free here officially pretty soon too, right?
Yeah, had a cryptic or more vague tweet about new opportunities, and I know Pittsburgh would be technically an old opportunity, a previous one, but it seemed to hint that Hilton's not going to return to the Bengals. And so
he's actually unrestricted. Okay, I thought he had 1 year left, but he's actually going to be. Yeah. He actually is going to be unrestricted. So
right, so does not appear he's going to be re-signed, which makes sense because the Bengals have their hands full with T. Higgins and maybe Trey Hendrickson, Jamar Chase, they're going to have to focus their money on those huge mega contracts and probably aren't in position to spend on somebody like Mike Hilton. I know he's 31. I know even in Pittsburgh, his coverage skills were never top end, and they probably diminished in
They have.
Cincinnati. I think, the end of last year was pretty rough for him in coverage, but I still see age. I could just see it happening just from a what could happen, not even what I want to happen
Right.
standpoint. And again, I like Slay would not be my starting point. There's at least two slot corners that are younger, better that I would pursue before Mike Hilton, but you need run defense, you need physicality, you need blitzing off the edge. They didn't get that from their slot corners last year. Hilton can still certainly provide those things.
He's a physical guy still. If there's one thing that guy can do, it's help out tackling and coming off the edge and defending against the run. He still gets his nose dirty. His coverage skills have declined since he's been in Cincinnati, and he was never a super great cover guy overall. But remember, for several years there, we talked about Steelers and defensive players, especially on the defensive side of football, and true outside guy, outside the organization, guys that had not been with the team before, and the whole over 30 thing. And then it seems like they definitely have come off that now. But I mean, if you're going to talk about a guy that had been previously with the organization before over 30, we got a couple that we're talking about potentially, guys like Mike Hilton, guys like Javon Hargrave, and all like that. So once again, would it be my first choice? I'm with you. No, it would not. But would I be shocked if the Steelers went down that road? No, I would not.
Yeah, same. He's got 24 tackles for a loss over the last 2 years combined. Mike Hilton does, and so still making an impact behind the line of scrimmage as he did in Pittsburgh. And also, I think it helps a little bit because Pittsburgh no longer plays sides, but they're outside corners where Joey Porter Jr. can travel in the slot now, and so Hilton's going to be hopefully in fewer poor matchups in the slot because the corners, in his first stint, you have your left corner, your right corner. Those guys didn't move. If a number one receiver kicked inside to the slot, Hilton was basically on him. Now Porter can just travel with that guy and not put Hilton in a difficult coverage situation, which helps a little bit.
Yep, agreed.
Where to from here, Dave? Any other free agents who have been released or pending released that we should be mentioning?
Looks like Gardner Minshew's getting word that he's going to be released. Who else is coming free here?
Do you have any interest in Minshew as a number 2?
I can think of worse number 2s, I guess.
Yeah, I can see that. He's always been, I think, best in that role as a spot starter, gritty backup. He's certainly not a starter. Proved that with the Raiders last year. So, I could see that fit.
Yeah. Especially if you could get him on the cheap, which I would imagine at this point he would be. But I wouldn't throw a parade over it, but I could see it fitting.
Right. But obviously Pittsburgh has to figure out their starting quarterback number 1 before you get to number 2. And whatever it's worth, ESPN's Adam Schefter yesterday on the Pat McAfee show, I wouldn't call it an official report, but sounded like pretty informed speculation or just kind of the buzz that his understanding is that the Steelers are determined to get a quarterback signed by the end of this week, and that Justin Fields, Schefter thinks, is first in the pecking order, which is consistent with other reporting about the team leaning Fields. I still find that to be kind of pretty meaningless language in terms of first in the pecking order and, front runner. Nothing's done until it's done, obviously. And there's not been any, real concrete reporting saying that, yes, Fields is 100% the guy they're going to try to get a deal done with first. But, I've always said a deal would likely come post-combine, hopefully before the legal tampering period begins, noon on Monday, and that seems to be where Schefter's at as well.
Right. So nothing's really, nothing is absolute at this point. What do you make of all the Darnold rumblings now that he officially has not been tagged by the Vikings?
In rumblings in terms of Pittsburgh, or just what's going to happen with him
in general, and people trying to connect the dots? Would you even want to go down that road with Darnold?
I don't want to put my head in the sand because I think for a team like Pittsburgh, all options need to be considered. And Darnold is certainly, I would say, the best and the most successful 2024 quarterback that's a pending free agent. It just seems pretty unlikely to come to Pittsburgh. Either he'll re-sign with Minnesota, even though they did not use the tag. The reporting across the board has been there's still a desire for both sides to get something done. If not, I could really see the Raiders making a hard charge at Stafford. That's been the other team pretty consistently connected with I say Stafford, I meant Darnold. Raiders and Darnold have been connected quite a bit, and I just think Pittsburgh does not have the infrastructure to give Darnold the foundation that he had in Minnesota. Doesn't have the quarterback guru and Kevin O'Connell. Doesn't have the great receiving options in Addison and of course Justin Jefferson. I just don't think it would work in Pittsburgh for Darnold, and it's going to, of course, cost you. That's probably a $40 million+ contract, which I'm just not willing to go all in on for a Sam Darnold.
It feels like that was just a perfect storm type situation for Darnold in Minnesota for all the reasons that you just mentioned, right? Had the weapons, had a good offensive mind, had good game plans. Now, look, when the wheels came off late in the season, they came off for him. You started to see shades of old Sam Darnold. And here's the thing with him, his adjusted net yards per passing attempt number for as good as he played last season, and for a team that ultimately went 14-3, it was still only 6.99, and it was his second best adjusted net yards per passing attempt stat for a season compared to 2022. But 2022 with Carolina, he only played 6 games, started and played in 6 games with him. So obviously not a full selection of games. So if you want to look at a full season, and once again, for as well as he did play, he didn't crack. He almost got to 7, but he was not at 7. You're talking about a guy that still has a career adjusted net yards per passing attempt stat number of 5.47. And you do kind of wonder how a switch in offense and different set of weapons, might he revert? Might the Steelers get the 5.47 guy, and to spend all that money, to me, the devil, even if you did not go to Justin Fields' route, we're forced to pick. Okay, here's a question for you. If you were forced to pick about the same price tag on Russell Wilson or Sam Darnold, let's say you lose Justin Fields for whatever reason, which route would you rather go?
For the same price tag in this
Yeah,
hypothetical?
let's say general, same contract in general, one for one with Sam
Okay.
Darnold and Russell Wilson. Which way are you going?
So that just goes then off of who's the better quarterback, who's the better fit. I would say Darnold in that scenario over Russ.
I would tend to go Russell Wilson because of the devil that within there, and potentially maybe giving him more, a couple of more weapons. I would be more apt, I think, to go with Russell Wilson than I would Sam Darnold.
Okay, that's fair. There's certainly some value in continuity, and Pittsburgh's not had that at quarterback since Ben. It's been 5 different starting quarterbacks, revolving door, new week 1 starter each season. And so that is, I think, a big reason why Pittsburgh wants to bring back one of Fields or Russell Wilson. Also, the lack of other external options, another reason why Pittsburgh wants to stick with the guys that they know. But I think either way, it's probably more of a moot conversation where I think Darnold's not going to be in play for Pittsburgh. Again, maybe I'm putting blinders on. I don't want to completely discount it. There was an ESPN report that said don't totally discount the idea of Darnold. And if Fields leaves, then I think you have to really look at other options as well if you're Pittsburgh. But it just seems like it's far more likely he either stays in Minnesota, which I think probably, well, should Darnold stay in Minnesota with McCarthy there? If you're Sam Darnold, what is your best move?
Well, look, this is going to be the last attempt bite at the apple for him, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's going to get paid well no matter where he goes, though, I assume. Whether that's the Raiders, stay with Minnesota, he's going to get a big contract.
I would like the opportunity to at least, you know, assuming I'm not leaving a ton of money on the table, any one place, I would like the opportunity to at least play somewhere.
Sure. So is that better to do that in Minnesota with the first rounder over your shoulder, or the Raiders, who are a rebuilding team, but you might have more job security?
Right. I would tend to maybe think the Raiders potentially.
That's what I'm thinking too, but it's hard to leave Minnesota
Or
with
Pittsburgh, if
Jefferson.
he got, because obviously if you pay him that kind of money, he's going to come in and start. At least he knows he's going to a place where he's going to start.
Yeah, although as Kirk Cousins found out, and you can start one moment and then
Sure.
be benched the next behind the first rounder, which is why I think staying in Minnesota is a little more risky than going outside and going to say to the Las Vegas Raiders.
How mobile do you view Sam Darnold as being at this point in his career?
Functionally mobile. I mean, he's 28, he's younger, he never was known as that hyper mobile guy. He's probably similar in a sense to Russell Wilson, as in where Russ is at in his career in terms of just the general mobility of what they can do. But I think he could work Arthur Smith's offense. I don't know how much he was under center last year in Minnesota. I would have to look up the number on that because that'll be important. And how successful he was off of play action will be another number I'd have to dig into.
Okay. All right.
All right, Dave. Let's see. What else do we have? We have a pre-draft visit. We're in draft season. Pro
All
days are
right.
already starting up. Dave, you eagle-eyed your first Steelers scout of the season, which really marks draft season for all of us here at Steelers Depot. Assistant, or really, what's Casey Whitle's official title? I don't know if it's area scout, but the scout Casey White was at the Indiana Pro Day yesterday, and so that kicks off the a pretty busy week of pro days. Purdue is happening today. Dave, we got a report from the ML Football Twitter account, which is pretty solid whenever they put out a source like this, that Iowa State wide receiver Jaylen Noel is going to have a pre-draft visit with the Steelers. Has not happened yet. We don't know exactly when that will occur, but it will apparently happen before April's draft. Noel had a great combine workout, ran sub 4.4, jumped 41.5 inches, had a really strong 2024 season with the Cyclones, over 1,000 yards. Not the biggest guy, but is one of those playmaking type of receivers that Pittsburgh needs to be adding.
Let's see. Pittsburgh officially lists Casey White as football operations scouting coordinator.
Okay, I knew
So,
there was some title, complex title.
and obviously he was probably in Indianapolis, right, for the combine, and right around the corner with Indiana. I know you did this as well too. I looked at Ball State and Miami of Ohio. The videos both those teams put out. I did not spot anybody there. Doesn't mean that the Steelers didn't have anybody there. I would imagine maybe somebody was there, especially coming out of the combine. We just haven't tracked that down yet. I would imagine at some point, maybe later on today, we'll try to look for. Did you find any photos from there outside of the Twitter accounts?
I found a video for Miami, Ohio that had a lot of footage from the pro day. I'm like 95% sure they did not have somebody
Okay.
at Miami, Ohio's pro day because there was a good amount of footage and there weren't a ton of scouts there. And I didn't see a Steelers guy. And I think White would have been easy to spot. Not that that's going to be exactly a marquee pro day. Although, you know who's the quarterback or who was the quarterback from Miami, Ohio, the Red Hawks this year, which I did not know until I watched the pro day recap. You know who the quarterback was this year?
No, I don't.
Brett Gabbert, the brother of Blaine Gabbert.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, that's a guy that actually had a pretty good career for Miami. So maybe we'll do a profile on him. He had his pro day workout, but yeah, maybe somebody was there for Ball State. Maybe there was somebody there for Miami, but we know there was for Indiana, and I imagine somebody will be at Purdue today.
Casey going to Purdue?
Either him or Sadowski. It's either going to be him or Mark Sadowski. Kind of likes to cover that kind of. He's not an area scout, but he likes to kind of cover that Midwestern territory. So imagine one of those two.
All right. So, you got the tracker up and going, right?
We'll do that when we get a second name in with to have multiple people on the list, but the tracker will be getting posted here shortly. Sure.
Okay, and about the pre-draft visit with Noel, went and looked at a little bit more of his tape. A guy that I think we've already got and have had a scouting player profile up on him. Guy that seems to function best out of the slot. Good kind of short area wide receiver. He can get vertical. And there's a couple of contested catches on his resume there, but it feels like he's more of a going to be more of a guy that you probably tend to go in the slot, a guy that can not afraid to go over the middle, a guy that runs overs, and guy that runs crossers. And some of his best work, I think, is out routes, get separation that way. Once again, can get vertical, but I think overall good hands guy. Once again, I saw a couple of contested catches on his tape. A little undersized, I believe. Overall, probably not. I don't view him as an outside guy. That's for sure, 100%. But really, kind of one for one as far as skill set and type goes. It feels like they got one of those guys in Roman Wilson, or at least they hope they have one of those guys when it comes to that. So, but it is interesting. At least, I mean, you're not going to waste it. Top, why do they call them top 30? I don't know.
Yeah, it's just a buzzword.
But a pre-draft visitor on a guy that you don't have interest in. Now, look, we've seen this team over the years bring in guys to get to know, and then they circle back to them after their rookie contracts are over, if they hit free agency and all like that. So it is notable, obviously, if indeed he does come in to visit and all like that. But to me, he kind of profiles more as a slot guy.
And he predominantly played in the slot. I'm looking at the PFF numbers from 2024. He played 436 snaps in the slot, 257 out wide in 2023. Similar story, 330 in the slot, 194 out wide. Also has some punt return ability, a background there. A little maybe Calvin Austin in that regard, the overall profile. Roman Wilson, as you said, kind of similar type of a guy. So even if he's not the guy, I think it just speaks to Pittsburgh looking for playmaking wide receivers, dynamic type of guys that can make those game-breaking plays that Pittsburgh's been missing in their offense for quite some time.
Let's see, what did he measure in at? 5'10" and a quarter, 194, 29.5-inch arms, 8 3/4 hands, ran an official 4.39. So definitely has some speed there overall, and jumped out of the building. Really a fine athletic, got a lot of athleticism to him. Nice RAS score. So not shocking that the Steelers look at one of the most athletic wide receivers in this year's class.
Right, agreed. So that's the first name that we believe is going to come in for a visit at some point. And yeah, we top 30, that's the buzzword, but there's no bottom 30. You just get 30 pre-draft visitors, so we just call them pre-draft visitors. We know the history in Pittsburgh, a pretty strong correlation between the guys they bring in for visits, and often we'll be drafting 3-4 names off that list.
What was his production in college in
He broke out
totality?
in 2024. It was just okay, I think, prior to that. And then this past year was the big year for him in the Cyclones offense.
Did he top the 100 receiving mark?
I'll pull up his career stats here. Just give me 1 second. I think he did, because he had enough.
For his career?
Yeah, 245 receptions.
Okay, yeah.
Had 80 catches this year for almost 1,200 yards, 8 touchdowns, had 66 receptions for 820 and 7 touchdowns the year before for Iowa State.
All right. It definitely has some separation on his tape, especially in the shorter areas and over the middle and all.
Yeah, for our scouting report, the comp was Ladd McConkey, of course, had a fantastic year for the Chargers. So that was the comp for, is it Noel? Noel?
No, I think he pronounces it Noel. Yeah.
Okay.
But Ladd's a little bit different body type though, and he's a little bit taller.
I think there may be the similar height, a little thicker body. I think McConkey was than Noel. I didn't personally write the report on him, but that was just the comp, which I think just speaks to the level of separation, probably as much as anything, between those two guys.
All right.
There's just some breaking news here. Sam Hubbard is getting released by the Bengals. I've always been a big Sam Hubbard fan, not suggesting him for Pittsburgh, but I think he's always been a super underrated player for Cincinnati.
How old is he now? Feels like he's
getting
been
pretty old.
29?
Is he only 29? Feels like he's been in the NFL for 15 years.
Yeah. Let's see. He will turn 30 in June.
Yeah, only 2 sacks this year again, but I'm sure freeing up cap space because they got to find a way to keep that core together, and you're going to have to make sacrifices. So that probably means not re-signing Mike Hilton, releasing Sam Hubbard, they released Alex Kappa, right? And so you're really trying to create some money to be able to pay Higgins and Chase and maybe Hendrickson too.
Hubbard probably won't have problems finding work somewhere. Obviously don't. He's a little bit undersized weight wise. I don't think he'd be a true defensive end in the Steelers system.
Well,
More.
just sorry to interrupt you, but he's gonna not find any work because he just retired.
Oh, he
So
did. Okay.
just announced his retirement. So surprising decision, good career. I thought he was a really solid player, always overshadowed, but he's hanging up his cleats.
Okay. How many years did he play?
He just closed out of his again. It felt like 15, but
Yeah.
man, maybe it was looking like 7 years in the NFL. Homegrown, third round pick, great career for Sam Hubbard. So kudos to him and best of luck.
All right. So don't have to worry about him landing in Pittsburgh. Definitely.
We can confidently not suggest that guy,
Mhm.
but I've always liked Sam Hubbard. All right, Dave, getting back to the here and now. Any other draft news rumblings? You watch any players lately? Anyone? I know we're both kind of shifting into free agency mode these next couple of
Right.
weeks, and so I'm doing a little bit less activity with draft work. But anything you want to talk about?
The Arizona uh Arizona kid. I went and McMillan, watched a lot of him, contested catch guy. Watched also some of the Texas kid coming out of the combine in Matthew Golden, who's should undoubtedly be a first round guy. The only question is which one of these two maybe comes off the board before the other one, I think. So it doesn't feel like. I know a lot of the popular thing now is to mock Golden. I think to the Steelers. I think Kuiper did. I think a few others did there. I mean, I could see it with Golden if he's on the board at 21 for the Steelers, but. Once again, you got to, I think he'd be more of an X receiver type, wouldn't he, in the Steelers offense? And Lord knows they need some playmakers. They need some guys like that. I would imagine if the Steelers think they would have a shot at him, he would be a guy underclassman to come in for a pre-draft visit.
Yeah, I think Golden's been I think PFF had said a couple weeks back he was the most popular name mocked to Pittsburgh, and that was before he tore up the combine. And maybe he's going above 21 in mock drafts right now, but sure, that's not going to take any of the uh, how often the frequency. I'm looking for the word there for Golden connected to Pittsburgh. I know there's some concerns over his blocking, and I don't want to start and lead a receiver conversation with blocking because that's not the main priority. But in this Arthur Smith system, you got to block. You got to be able to make an impact in the run game for how run heavy they are. Could that be consideration? It may be. It's going to matter more to Pittsburgh than it's going to matter to probably a lot of other places around the NFL. But certainly Golden's going to be talked about until and unless, and probably even after Pittsburgh signs a veteran wide receiver.
Right. And neither one of those guys are would make it back around to in round two, you would think.
No, no.
Both those guys should be along with Emeka Egbuka out of Ohio State. Those three guys feel like the top, whatever order you want to put those three guys in. Probably the three that are going to go in the first round.
A little different talking point. Shadur Sanders, if you care about, and I'm using the buzzword here, but he's quote unquote falling, at least in mock drafts. I think there was even Dane Brugler mocked Shadur Sanders, the Colorado quarterback, to Pittsburgh yesterday. So is that a possibility, Dave? We know Cam Ward's going to be top 3 pick, maybe number 1 overall to Tennessee. Sanders, his situation seems more unsettled. Should Pittsburgh be exploring that as a team looking for that future franchise quarterback?
I mean, if he fell to him there at 21, it obviously would be hard to ignore. It seems like Jackson Dart's picking up some buzz coming out of the combine as well too. Look, quarterbacks, regardless of the class, they seem to go unless you're that class a few years ago with Kenny Cam Moore. This class, let's look at it this way. The top three, and let's assume Ward, Sanders, and Jackson Dart. Two of those guys feel like they're going to go off the board before the Steelers pick at 21. But it's would Dart actually go ahead as the big thing with Sanders is obviously being undersized and the overall arm strength, especially if he's to play where it's cold and have to cut through the wind and those kind of things related to that. I suppose, is there a possibility that he falls out of the top 10? I guess, but I mean, for him to fall all the way down to 21, you really would have to wonder why that's happening, almost to the same degree that Kenny Pickett was the first quarterback taken off the board, few years ago there. Uh,
But what team? I hadn't looked at the whole draft order. What team in that 10 to 20 range needs a quarterback right now?
hmm, I'd have to relook at the draft order.
Same. I mean, you got the Raiders at 6. So you think you look at what they do there. Do they look at, because at that point you assume Hunter's gone, you assume Odell Carter's gone, you assume Cam Ward is gone. They have other directions they could go, obviously, but that's probably maybe where the conversation is going to start with Shadur Sanders, at least as things sit today.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from here by looking. What would New Orleans do at 9, even though they have
That's
Carr?
true. No, that's true. It's a good point.
The Jets at 7. What are they going to do at quarterback? But I guess specifically, if you're going to talk about what happens after 10, and Chicago's obviously at 10, and they've sewn up there. San Francisco's going to work out something with Purdy. Dallas obviously has Dak. Miami has Tua. Indianapolis has their quarterback, although they're going to bring in some competition of some sort. You wouldn't think they're going to spend a first round draft pick there. Atlanta obviously has Penix. Arizona still has their quarterback situation. Cincinnati has Burrow. Seattle seems like they're going to stick
I don't
with.
know. I could see Seattle.
You can see Seattle.
And Gino's last year of his contract,
Yeah.
right? He's not this long-term future franchise quarterback.
Okay. Tampa Bay at 19 and Baker, 20 Knicks in Denver. I guess I can see why, but I mean, what's a team like the Giants going to do? Vegas, the Jets, Cleveland obviously have been connected with. If Tennessee was to pass on Ward, Cleveland seems like they're set to would jump in Cam Ward there. So let's assume Ward's off the board in the first 2 picks.
Sure.
The Giants have got to do something, even if they went out and got, I don't know, Russ, Darnold,
Rodgers.
They're going to they would have to do something at the quarterback position to shore that up.
Sure. It'd be fair to wonder why these quarterback needy teams are passing on Shadur Sanders, but each team evaluates independently. And if you like the guy, it doesn't really matter what the rest of the NFL thinks about him. I think it's even less about him falling to 21, but if he gets past the top 10, do you consider then trading up for a quarterback? Because it's going to be a whole lot less costly to go from 21 to 13 than it would be 21 to making up number 7 or something like that. So I'm not saying they should do it. I just, we're hearing Sanders is maybe not going to go in that top 5 range. Who knows what will happen? Still a long time until draft day. I think he's a pretty talented guy, but just want to have a different conversation than kind of the same old handful of names.
Boy, these shorter quarterbacks sure seem to be more in vogue now than they have ever been.
Oh yeah, I mean it's actually now rare to find a tall quarterback.
Right.
Those guys are pretty uncommon.
And Sanders measured in at 6'1.5", 212. Obviously watched a lot of Colorado games throughout the season because of the last name and Hunter and all like that. Big personality you get with that guy though.
Yeah, I mean it sounds like, and media critiques are just that this draft season, but he's kind of, some people will like him, some people won't. Personality that may not fit everyone. Seemed like a really good guy to me. Seemed to be really there for his teammates. You mentioned at the combine him hyping up his guys, defending Will Howard on Twitter. So I've not seen any issues on Shadur Sanders on that front. Yes, there's going to be the Sanders name and some of the media buzz that comes with that. But if he can play quarterback and be a good leader and teammate, which I think he can be, then that's all that really matters overall. And I think he's basically listed as the same size as Cam Ward, right? They're pretty identical. So I know there's some concerns over Sanders I think the build's a little bit different. Sanders' build reminds me of Jaden Daniels, kind of this leaner, more wiry type of frame. Daniels made it work, obviously. I think Daniels was the better quarterback by far, better physical tools. But from a frame standpoint, those guys seem pretty comparable.
Yeah. Yeah, you make a great point about if he was to fall out of time. My gut tells me it's just not going to happen. He's not going to be there. He's going to be gone.
I think that's fair, and I probably tend to agree. But just to bring up a new name in the conversation, I thought was just worth mentioning for 5 minutes.
If he did fall, I mean, you do make a great point though. If he did fall out of for whatever reason out of the top 10, I mean, he could continue to free fall.
Yeah, but then I also talk about trading up. I've talked about, so many of these teams that aren't bad have found their quarterback by trading up. The Chiefs traded up for Mahomes. The Bills traded up for Josh Allen. The Ravens got back in the first round for Lamar Jackson. And so Pittsburgh wouldn't have to probably go, well, I don't know. He probably wouldn't have to go to 7, probably wouldn't do that. But if he fell past that, he fell past like the Jets are picking what, 9th?
The Jets picked 7th.
7th. If he got past them or past, is it the Saints at 9? Who was at 9?
Yeah, Saints at 9. If he got past the Saints at 9, you would have to wonder, would anybody, I mean, who in their right mind would go up that far? Because you start looking at yeah, you make an interesting point here, Alex, because if he was to get past New Orleans at 9, I guess the next bullet point would be at, like you said, Seattle at 18. And if he made it past then, and if the Steelers didn't bite on him at 21, I mean, look at the teams after the Steelers. You got the Chargers, Green Bay, Minnesota, Houston, the Rams, Baltimore, and Detroit, Washington, Buffalo, Kansas City. None of those teams are going to draft him. I mean, is this a guy that could fall all the way into, I mean, it's total hypothetical here. But if he made it past the Steelers at 21, even how much further would he fall down?
Well, the question becomes, I think if he falls past the top 7 or 9, does anyone trade up for him, which is what often happens with these quarterback situations. But then you also just sit there and say, okay, who's going to trade up for him? Because all the teams who needed a quarterback just passed on him the first time, and they're going to move up for him the second time. That happened with Lamar. Because remember, the Ravens took Hayden Hurst before they took Lamar Jackson, so maybe that's a comparable situation. I don't know. I'm spending probably too much time on this, but just hypothetically, as of today, and things can change, it does not sound crazy for Sanders to even say fall out of the top 10. And if he does, it's kind of like Justin Fields. Remember, he had fallen a little bit in the draft in 2021, and there was some buzz. Could Pittsburgh make a move up? That obviously ultimately did not happen. My point would be this: if Sanders happens to fall out, gets past the Saints at 9, you're going to hear conversation even on draft day about, does Pittsburgh make a push and trade up for this guy?
Yeah, I suppose it's not unthinkable.
So just something to think about for down the road. All right, Dave, where to from?
I still have to think in my heart of hearts he goes to the Giants or the Saints or the Jets.
Yeah, just for the quarterback need there, it just seems that it's hard to pass up on that if you're one of those teams in desperate need of a quarterback and basically with your job on the line. If you don't get a quarterback and start moving this franchise forward, if you're the Giants, you're going to get fired here after this season. So we'll see. And obviously what happens in free agency could also to a degree dictate quarterback need and wants.
That's interesting, though. I mean, I was a bit shocked to see someone like Dane come out, and because I mean, Dane's one of the, I mean, his draft guide's one of the best to read.
Mm-hmm. This wasn't a random guy. This is one of the draft experts.
Right. Now, obviously, as far and he knows the Steelers need a quarterback at some point for the future. So, interesting that he can has him falling down that far.
Yeah, so just something to think about. We'll talk about that, I'm sure, at some point before the draft kicks off, and we'll watch Sanders' situation. Could Pittsburgh be at that pro day? Probably wouldn't send Tomlin. They don't usually go out west, but could they send Tom Arth, the quarterback's coach? I don't know. We'll see. All right, Dave. Let's go through my free agent wish list to go from the draft to free agency. Doing this as I always do in two parts: offense and defense. The defense part will be more exciting for those who were underwhelmed by the offensive names. I think there's a couple of good names on this list here offensively. It's not all, bargain bin, dumpster diving type of options here. Although it's kind of reflected like that at quarterback. This assumes that one of Russell Wilson or Justin Fields or some other clear cut number one veteran starter gets signed. These are backup options. I think Taylor Heineke from the Chargers makes sense. There's an Arthur Smith connection. They worked together in 2023. How about bringing back Josh Dobbs as a number two, especially if Fields were to be re-signed, or when he talked about wanting the starter and the backup to have the same skill set to have this thing be more seamless. That makes a lot of sense there. And I think Tyler Huntley from Miami makes a lot of sense too. Pittsburgh knows him as well as basically anybody. They played him a bunch of times in Baltimore. He won a couple of games with Miami this past season. Could he be a number two behind, say, Justin Fields?
Would you now add Minshew to this list if you're writing it today?
Yeah, I think it's valid to put Minshew. He certainly, I think, would be an elevated option above those names. Pittsburgh's maybe not the perfect system for him. I think Minshew had his best success with the Colts last year in 2023 in that RPO, Shane Steichen heavy offense. But I just think from a talent standpoint, Minshew would make sense. But obviously that was written before the official release came today.
All right. I see where your head's at with all that. Running backs.
Yeah, again, I'm going to assume that Pittsburgh will be not retaining Najee Harris, or they'll tender Jaylen Warren and they'll draft somebody. And also, I'm not including any player that could get cut for this entire list. So, if any trade candidate, anyone under contract that's not a pending free agent, I did not include, just for the record. But a running back, again, backup type of options. Nobody super exciting. I think a couple of third down options could be important though. If Warren kind of moves into more of a 1A position where he's getting more carries and getting more early down work? Do they want him to be a true 3-down guy? Would they take him off of the third down duties he's worn for the last couple of years? I think you look at pass protectors and Samaje Perine from the Chiefs. I think Javonte Williams, from Denver. Now, he had that knee injury a couple of years ago. He's not been the same runner, but he's been a really effective pass protector, good receiver, 52 receptions for the Broncos last year. He's going to be pretty cheap overall. If you had a room of Warren, a rookie back in the second or third round, and Javonte Williams, to me, that's a pretty quality 3-back running back room.
Yeah, I could. I mean, I draft pedigree along with it, obviously on top of it there. Now, look, we'll have to see what the tender comes in on Jaylen Warren. I'm assuming all these guys would earn that you have on this list would have APYs of less than whatever the tender is on Warren.
Yeah, none of these guys are going to be expensive.
All right. Williams might have a little bit of a market, though, right?
The most of the names on the list, sure. But, we're talking $4 million per year. So I suppose maybe that's more than the tender if Warren gets tendered at the original round level. But it's not going to be a lot of money. And Warren really has no say here in what his cost is going to be anyway.
Hasty and Wang Wu out of New York, Ryan, all those guys would be minimum value contracts, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think Wanwu's really interesting, though, as a kick returner. Pittsburgh needs to improve their kick return game. That has failed with Cordell Patterson, the worst kick return unit in football last year. I've mentioned that a couple of times. This has been the NFL's most successful return man since 2021 when he got drafted. He's got 4 kick return touchdowns. He only had 3 kick returns last year, Dave, and he ran one back for a 99-yard touchdown. So that was with the New York Jets. And so that'd be a cheap 1-year deal. He gives you really nothing offensively, but if you want just a pure kick returner, even to bring him to camp, just to have that option, I would do it.
Okay. Interesting dart throw there.
And how about a fullback? Let's get a fullback in this Arthur Smith offense. Dave, Patrick Ricard, take away from the Baltimore Ravens. He's 31. There is an age concern there, but old school fullback, but versatile. He's played wing. He plays fullback. He can play a little bit on special teams, really kind of more kick return, blocker, up man type of thing. But Smith's offense did not have a fullback last year. They tried Connor Hayward a little bit. They tried Michael Pruitt a little bit. Neither really had success. Take from the Ravens, add the Pittsburgh, get Ricard for this run heavy. If you want to build this run game up, add Patrick Ricard.
You could definitely use them as a puller or as in split zone, and it'd be an upgrade over what you're doing right now.
Yeah, so just want to mention that, and he's not going to be that expensive either. And
Right.
get him on the field for 15 snaps a game. Pittsburgh, how bad they were in short yardage last year. You get Ricard out there to lead the way on 3rd and 1, 4th and 1. I like that.
All right. I could see them going after that on a 1-year deal.
All right, at receivers where the names get a little bit more exciting, Davante Adams, we talked about him. I think Darius Slayton makes the most amount of sense. He's not as good as Davante Adams, but I think that's the most realistic and name I'd really be targeting if I'm Pittsburgh as a true number 2, speedster, burner, good locker room guy, consistently productive. You can convince him to come to Pittsburgh for the chance to always be playoff competitive after he's played on horrible offenses and unsuccessful teams, a lot of chaos with the Giants. I thought Pittsburgh's offense has been amazing, but it's been better than the Giants and hopefully improving. So I think you get that guy for maybe 12, 14 million per season. I'll take that.
What was his cash last year?
Yeah, because like you said, they redid that contract to kind of keep him happy in that one season. There were some kind of minor rumors that Pittsburgh might have interest last off season. Didn't happen, obviously.
Looks like his cash earnings was 5.8 million total. But because of the free agency short list and all, I mean, is he a $6 or $7 million guy still, or at
No, I think
least?
he's more than that. I mean, PFF projects him at 12.5 million per season because the receiver market just gotten so hot. So I think he's
Right,
probably in that 12 to 14, 15 million per year range, which is still a pretty cheap contract for a wide
right.
receiver.
Yeah, I mean, the Steelers obviously could make that work. I like the fit, as we talked about at the top of the show there.
And he is still in his 20s. How old is Darius Slayton? He just turned 28. So
Okay.
still youth on his side. Other receivers, I was a little more mixed on some of these other names, but I can see the intrigue. Amari Cooper just got really quiet in Buffalo last year, but it is always tough getting traded midseason, trying to catch on with a new team. He had that huge 2023 season. I really think Pittsburgh needs a good route runner, and Cooper to me is still a really top end route runner, somebody who can just get open.
He is 30 now too, so he will be 31 in June. So I wouldn't imagine he would be too overly expensive.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what his market value is, and obviously market forces could have an impact. I do think receivers will be a little more expensive because of the market heating up these past 18 months and the receiver draft class not being as strong. But I think Cooper is somebody that I would be, excuse me, at least looking at. Now, I do kind of contradict myself because I say they need a route runner, then I suggest DeAndre Hopkins, who is really more of a physical contest combat catch kind of a guy, but he does that at a really high level, still had success with the Chiefs last year. That's a guy that I wish Pittsburgh would have traded for. I get why he went to Kansas City and obviously worked out almost perfectly for him, one game short of winning a Super Bowl. But if he's out there, I think you definitely take a look at D Hop.
Let's see what cash. Did Cooper earn 19 million total cash between the Browns? It
Oh,
was all
Amari Cooper.
no. Amari Cooper was right at about 20 million last year, if I remember correctly, as far as cash earned. He obviously isn't worth that now.
Yeah, he's taken some really cheap deals, I think, in the past, but I don't know exactly what number he would come in at. I don't know if there's projections out there for him. Does 15 million, 13 million,
I
maybe in
think
that Slayton range?
PF over the cap has an valuation. I think right now of around 5 million, but he'll come in. He should come in
Really?
higher than that.
Okay. Yeah, maybe I'm overestimating that. So again, Cooper's not a guy that I'd be starting the conversation with. PFF's showing 15 million per year is their projection.
That's a little
Um,
stiff. I feels like.
yeah, maybe it's somewhere in between, but just to
And
mention him.
over the cap's valuations based on performance and all like that. So
Mhm. Right, right. Some other names to mention, these are gonna be more lower level, not necessarily like set it, forget it options, but Joshua Palmer from the Chargers has not gotten much buzz. He's not even 26. He averaged 15 yards per catch last year. He's a big play, downfield type of receiver with size. That would make sense. If you want cheap speed, how about Hollywood Brown from the Chiefs? Had that 2024 season basically wiped out by that collarbone injury in the fall. He's had success against Pittsburgh, and they seem to always sign those guys that have had success against the Steelers before. That's a cheap vertical guy. Where especially if you resign Russell Wilson, then Brown makes a lot of sense there. DJ Chark would be a real low-level equivalent. Speedster, hurt last year with the Chargers. Take a one-year flyer on him. Again, that is not going to solve all your problems, but just addition and add on a flyer. Where do you come in on Keenan Allen from Chicago, Dave? I put him on the list. I'm a little mixed on it. I think that makes more sense if Fields comes back as opposed to Wilson, but he is that savvy veteran. I think he can still run routes and certainly get open against zone coverage.
Yeah, but that guy, I think, has missed some games. I've had him on some fantasy teams over the years as well, too. It seems like every time I have him, he gets banged up and misses some time. But I think a good guy overall. He only has probably 1 year left in him, though. So he's more of a possession guy.
Right, right. But still productive last year, 70 catches.
70? Yeah.
Yeah, played in 15 games, but he's been hurt a little bit, nicked up, played through some stuff over the years, had 744 yards and 7 touchdowns for Chicago last season. So, yeah, again, that's not if Russ comes back, I really probably would have no interest in Allen at that point. I don't really see the fit. If Fields returned, which seems again a little bit more likely right now, then I think Allen becomes a little more attractive.
All right.
The rest of the list are pretty low level. I just threw one tight end on there, maybe number 3, John Bates from Washington. Not sure if you could convince him to come to Pittsburgh. He played over 500 snaps last year for the Commanders, but was a real blocker only had 8 receptions. In Smith's tight end, multiple heavy offense, maybe Bates could come in. And then I talked about the need for some veteran backup offensive tackles. I think Kelvin Beachum, who Joe Clark mentioned earlier this offseason, makes a ton of sense not only as a versatile backup, but mentor to it's a really young tackle, Ruben Broderick Jones and Troy Fautanu, and even Dylan Cook. And Jones is in a make or break 2025 season. So Beachum, I think, makes a ton of sense there. Some other backups, Storm Norton from the Falcons, Arthur Smith connection, and Charlie Heck from the 49ers.
Yeah, remember I mentioned Beachum way early in this thing here, and I know it's not sexy, but I mean this is a guy that can play both tackle spots. Still, do I want to depend on him to start 16, 17 games? No, but great leader to have in the locker room, can teach some of these younger tackles a few things, not only on the field but in life in general as well too. And obviously has the roots going back to time in Pittsburgh. There would be a great place for him to end his career if you could get one season out of him as a swing guy.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Are there some interior guys to mention? There could have been. I mean, some people in the comments on the post have talked about Mekhi Becton, which I wouldn't hate. I certainly see the appeal in that. It just seems a little less likely, and I think there's something to build on with Mason McCormick.
All right.
All right, that's the list there. Let's kind of stick with free agents, Dave. Earlier this week, we didn't get a chance to mention it because it was a jam-packed Monday show, but I made my Steelers free agent predictions, which I do every year, of the guys that are pending free agents, the ones whose contracts are expiring, who's going to stay, who's going to leave. And so, Dave, let's talk through it. I want to get your predictions as well to see if we have any disagreement on who will leave and who will re-sign. So I'm just going to read them down in the order in which I wrote them. Offensive guard James Daniels, Dave. Does he leave? Does he stay? Okay. Asked and answered, and I agree. I think most people believe that Daniels will be out the door. I wonder when he'll sign. Will he sign right away? I wonder if he'll have to take some time, get healthier, rehab, recover. I don't know exactly where he's at coming off the torn Achilles to prove that he can take what'll probably be a 1-year deal with a team.
Yeah, I think all of it's dependent on his health, but that coming off those Achilles is tough, so we'll have to just see. But he's gone.
Najee Harris, leave or stay?
He's gone. It's hard to imagine him re-signing.
If you had to put an odds on it, you love your percentages. What are the odds that he stays?
I would put it probably 5%.
Yeah, I think 5-10% is probably where I'm at as well. The quarterback situation, lumping together basically Fields and Russ, and we've talked about this before, but to answer it again, who stays, who goes with these two quarterbacks? My
gut has been it'd be Fields returns and Russell Wilson ends up elsewhere.
Mine as well, but it just seems still up in the air right now, and I don't want to assume that it won't be Russ because it's been Russ at every other corner. So we'll just have to wait and see. Dante Jackson, leave or stay?
I'm with you. He leaves. The only way I can see him coming back is if it's a veteran benefit deal. Just it, there's just not enough to work with there. Can't stay healthy and all like that. He might find work somewhere else and pay him a little bit more than minimum.
I went with leaves as well. I struggle with this one a little bit, but I think Omar Khan, the way he talked at the combine, he kind of had a similar answer as he did with Najee Harris. We've had a conversation. The door is open, which to me is more probably not going to bring you back. We're going to at least explore other options, and with how many good corners there are out there, I think Pittsburgh can make a real upgrade over Dante Jackson, who really struggled the back half of the year. Had a really good start to the season, but the shoulder injury, the back injury, couldn't finish games, got toasted. I'm not going to spend a lot of money on Dante Jackson.
Yeah, I agree.
But he could get paid decently because he picked off 5 passes last year and had good tape whenever he was healthy. So there may be a chance for him elsewhere, and maybe he comes back if he's still out there in mid-April or something. All right, Dan Moore Jr., leave or stay.
He's gone. He'll get somebody going to throw a little bit of money at him.
Agreed. I just wonder where he'll go. I have no idea what team he'll sign with, but he'll get paid decently because of that offensive line tax for a mid-20s left tackle with experience.
Right.
Landon Roberts, inside linebacker. Landon Roberts, return or stay?
Yeah, he's coming back. I think he expressed as much middle to late last season there. I think he knows he likes to roll. I think he wants to end his career in Pittsburgh if he can. They definitely have the need for his style in that defense. As long, not a guy that I want playing 900 snaps, but he can give you the base defense at downhill thumper and all. And once again, I think he likes it in Pittsburgh. I think he wants to end his career there, so I expect them to re-sign him.
I do as well. I'm with you. I think it makes the most amount of sense for both sides. Keep that 3-man rotation of himself, Patrick Queen, and Peyton Wilson. Mike Williams, leave or stay?
You know what? I'm going to go as long as Aaron Rodgers does not land in Pittsburgh for some reason. I would not be surprised if they resign him to a veteran benefit deal.
Okay. Well, this is our first disagreement, which I like.
Right.
I say he leaves. Why would Mike Williams want to stay in a place where he caught 9 passes in 9 games?
Because I think he thinks that he showed enough that he can maybe show out, and they got a very short receiver room as they sit here right now, and maybe they could get him done before some of these, maybe a bigger name is signed. So look, would I bet my house on this? No.
Sure.
But and am I paying him a lot to return? No. But I mean, the market's going to be mighty, mighty cool for him.
That's true.
And I think if he got the opportunity to come back and compete, he would. So, just as a loose prediction and to go against the grain here, I'll say he resigns.
All right. Fair enough. I like it. Nate Herbig, guard, center, return or stay?
Yeah, I'm not breaking the bank here. That's for sure. His brother obviously being there, you would think he wanted to return on that, assuming that he doesn't get any big money thrown or decent money thrown at him around the NFL. I can see him returning on a veteran benefit deal. That's the only way I'm bringing him back.
Yeah, I agree. That makes sense. The question is, will Pittsburgh want him back? I think he'd love to come back, as you said, to play with his brother. He's now going to be in a backup role behind Frazier, backup guard. But does Pittsburgh want to explore other options? We'll see. But I went with return for Nate Herbig. That may be a little bit later in the offseason, may not be an immediate out the gate type of thing. But my prediction was he will re-sign on the cheap. All right, DeMonte Casey, leave or stay?
He's gone. He's got to be gone, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's kudos to him for playing out the length of his contract, but about to turn 32, want to get younger, faster in the secondary. Thank you, Casey, but we're gonna move on.
I agree.
Van Jefferson, leave or stay?
Got to be gone. Got to be gone.
I think he leaves. It would not shock me if he re-signed in, say, June around OTAs as that known blocker for Arthur Smith's system.
All right. Yeah, I think he's gone now.
But they certainly have to get an upgrade. I just think they could bring him to camp as somebody that can help show the way for some of these young bucks. Quarterback Kyle Allen, leave or stay?
We hardly do you. What did he play? 2 snaps?
And threw a beautiful 19-yard completion to Pat Fryerman.
Right. At least he put good tape down. He probably gone.
Yeah, this one I know Khan left the door open to re-sign him as that kind of combination of quarterbacks. Is he a number two? Probably not. And so I
Uh,
think they go in a different direction. It wouldn't floor me if he came back, maybe to compete with Skylar Thompson as a number three if you did. Let's just say Fields, you resign, get another veteran backup quarterback, you resign Kyle Allen and have Thompson be in that room as well. Those are kind of the four guys you take to camp. That's not a bad room overall, top to bottom. But I went leaves as well. This one could go either way.
I could see him landing with the Chargers.
Any particular reason?
Just it kind of maybe fits what they want to do over there as
Okay.
either a number two or a number three behind Herbert.
All right. Tight end Michael Pruitt, leave or stay.
Goodbye.
Oh, be nice.
Yeah.
He was not awful this year. I
Yeah.
thought his inline blocking was serviceable, but in his 30s with knee issues, I said leave as well.
Yeah, I think he's gone.
About Dirty Red, off-ball linebacker Tyler Medikevich.
The only way Tyler comes back is if it's to compete and maybe try to make the team a special teamer.
Yeah,
I think it's about time's about up for Tyler in the NFL.
I agree. I think this is near the end for Dirty Red. All right, Dave, this one may take you a while to chew on, so I'm going to let you have a couple moments here. Cornerback Cam Sutton, leave or stay?
Yeah, just see you later, Cam Sutton. The ship has sailed with him.
Was heavy on the sarcasm for those listening unaware. Leaves as well. What a disaster signing Cam Sutton was from the PR standpoint of signing this guy who was had an arrest warrant down, felony charges, domestic abuse allegations, and then the play itself suspension was miserable. So just a terrible decision by the team.
Mhm.
All right, cornerback James Pierre, return or stay?
Man,
Or
who's
return
got
or
a
leave?
gun for you? Once again, I'm not breaking the bank here, but if I could get him to sign to a veteran benefit deal to come back and compete, try to make the team to be my gunner again, guy can still get down the field and make plays in that phase of the game. God forbid he can play snaps out there on defense if you put him out there. I obviously don't want to see him have to do it numerous times, but I think he'll take a look around, and his best spot will be to return to Pittsburgh on a veteran benefit deal.
My return or stay slip up indicated which way I was leaning. I think he'll return. Again, may not get signed right away, but did well as a gunner last year, so I could see the value. I don't want him to be the number three option. I don't think he will be. I think Corey Trice at worst will be a number three top backup cornerback option, but could resign cheap on that 1 year minimum type of level.
Right.
All right, everyone's favorite offensive lineman, Max Sharping, leave or stay.
Yeah, we hardly knew you, unless once again we're in the veteran benefit type, no guarantee type deals here. But I think he's gone.
Me too. CJ Henderson, cornerback. We also hardly knew, leave or stay.
Yeah, the fact that he end the season on the practice squad, didn't he? And he's
Didn't
one of
he
the
end on
ones that
IR? The
did
neck
he
injury?
was it the practice squad IR? Yeah, I'm trying to remember what happened with him. Look, he's not going to have a market out there. Could I see him coming back if he's healthy enough, can pass a physical on a veteran benefit deal to compete? Yeah, I could see that.
But your prediction up to if you had to make
I'll say
one?
they sign him back at some
Okay.
point, assuming he's healthy. But once again, I mean, we're we're splitting hairs here with guys that are probably not going to make the roster.
Yeah, not gonna make or break the off season. We don't know the extent of the neck injury. I said leaves, but with the pedigree, could stay.
I don't want to go, match every prediction you have here. I want to be a little bit
Yeah,
different here.
a little bit here. Calvin Anderson, offensive tackle, return or leave.
Man, they sure seem to like him enough to give him some snaps when needed. And who else do you have in that room to at least be a body at camp? So I'm with you here. I think he returns on a veteran benefit deal. Just try to see if he can earn a roster spot.
Yeah, just some veteran presence for the here and now. I still think Pittsburgh should add, improve, but he's played both tackle spots. You're losing Dan Moore. It's a young room overall. Resign Anderson, 1 year minimum contract, just to give you some offseason depth. Wide receiver Ben Skoranek, leave or stay.
Like him as a special teams player. I think can get down the field, be another quality gunner for you. I do wonder if he would like to go back to the Rams if it's all apples to apples as far as money goes. So I'm going to be different from you. I would not be surprised if he did re-sign on a veteran benefit deal, but I'm going to guess that he ultimately signs elsewhere.
Okay, I say return, but we'll agree to disagree, and I can see your point for sure. Here's maybe a little more interesting one. Defensive lineman Isaiah Loudermilk, part of that 2021 class, right? 2022 class. Oh God, what year was he drafted? And I'm getting myself all mixed up here. Either way, Dave, does Loudermilk return or stay? And he was part of the 21 class, of course. That's why he's a free agent.
Not going to have a big market out there. A guy that can give you some snaps against the run. Minimum value guy. I can see him coming back and at least competing for a roster spot on a veteran benefit deal. So I'm going to say he returns.
I think so too, and this is still working under the assumption Larry Ogunjobi's cut, but Dave, Larry Ogunjobi is still a Pittsburgh Steeler.
Sure.
Has your opinion on his future changed at all? I know you made the point about maybe they wait and sign somebody first, but what's your take?
Well, my opinion on him has not changed. As
Okay.
far as the prediction goes, I think it all depends what happens in the first few days of free agency. If they can upgrade and spend some money in a different place, I would not be surprised if he makes it through the start of the new league year and before that roster bonus is paid, cut.
I guess I should ask, has your thoughts on the odds of them exercising the option or the roster bonus on him changed at all? Have those odds increased at all, getting close to that option date?
I forget what percentage I put on him, but I mean nothing's changed overall. I mean, once again, is he worth the 7 million or whatever? I say no, he's not, and I don't think you just keep guys to fill a room up, especially at that price.
Sure. I don't think we ever put percentages on it before, but I don't think either of us were really expecting that option to be exercised. Would you still call it unlikely the team carries Ogunjobi past that roster bonus date?
Well, once again, and I wrote this up a couple of weeks ago when writing about him, you do have to look at the state of the room. You got Loudermilk going to be a free agent. I mean, there's nothing there when it comes to Lowry, who's under contract. Montravius Adams. I mean, you're obviously going to address this room in the draft. You might address it in free agency as well too. I mean, there's obviously a chance that he survives and gets paid that roster bonus.
Yeah.
There is a chance of that happening. I'm not gonna be paying and never have painted myself in a corner that he's unequivocally gone.
Hmm. Okay. So I was kind of more in that camp where I was pretty confident. I'm a little less certain now. Maybe it does depend on they sign a defensive lineman early out of the gate or not. We'll see.
All right.
All right, Jaylen Warren. Now, this is the restricted free agent. He's going to be tendered. We know that. So it's not a question of will he be tendered. I guess the more interesting question, at least slightly, is Dave, will he be tendered at the original round level or right to first refusal or receive a second round tender? That's the question I pose to you.
My gut all along up until now has been second round tender with him because I do wonder if you just put a right of first refusal on him, if there would be a team come calling on an offer sheet on him. And obviously, the way to quit that to keep that from happening would be to put the second round tender on him. But then again, you got the good running back draft class, and are you willing to gamble, make basically a $2 million gamble and say, we don't think we're going to have to compete with an offer sheet here. He's going to get tendered. We know that it's already happened at this point. We just don't know the level right now. Then you turn around and you see what Saquon Barkley did to the running back market yesterday.
Yeah.
Uh, is Jaylen Warren worth a quarter of what Saquon Barkley's worth now?
Yeah, I think you can make the case, especially if you assume that Najee Harris is not returning and Warren now becomes the clear top back on your depth chart.
I mean, if you It would be much easier if he had been a late round draft pick where a draft pick becomes involved with a right of first refusal. But with him being undrafted, you either match it or you lose him for nothing, you know. And then $2 million difference between the two tender prices on there makes this really difficult, as does the running back draft class. So I mean, he's going to be in a, he's getting tendered. It's tough, man. My gut all along is just put the second round tender on him and be done with it.
Is that what you're sticking with here today?
Yeah, but I wouldn't bet my house on it. With when it comes to the Steelers.
All right, those are valid points, and I think good reasons for the second round tender to set it, forget it, no anxiety, no concern, no looking over your shoulders or any buzz on somebody making a play for Warren. But I went with the original round tender, right of first refusal, that is cheaper because of the great running back class. If you want a running back this year, just go draft one. There's gonna be 15 guys you can go out there and draft and get less mileage and more team control. I mean, I guess an offer sheet would have team control, but cheaper overall, younger. And Warren did not have a great season because of the injuries. If he had the season that he had 2 years ago, then I think he'd do the second round tender to really make sure he remains a Steeler. But his numbers, his productivity was down because of the knee issues, hamstring issues, really wasn't himself and healthy until late, kind of post bye week. And so I think that gives Pittsburgh a little more confidence. No one's going to make a huge play for Jaylen Warren.
You always tend to value your own more than others do, and perhaps I'm doing that with him. But man, just a no nonsense guy. Get you yards after first contact. Normally healthy for the most part up until this past year. Had a couple of issues there, but a guy that can do a lot of things for you. My opinion is, why not just cash and cap is not. To me, he is worth the $5 million of the second round tender. Why not just be done with it? So maybe I've overvalued him a little bit here.
Well, I get your point. Just have the peaceful night's sleep. If you tender him second round level, he's going to be a Steeler.
Right.
No concern, no question, and you're good to go. So we'll see. We'll get our answer here pretty soon, right before the new league year. Right?
Oh yeah, we should know here
unrestricted.
any moment now what the tender is on him.
Yeah. And then finally, this is real extreme housekeeping for nerds like us, Dave. Jeremiah Moon and Ryan McCollum, exclusive rights free agents. Will they be tendered? Will they return to Pittsburgh?
Yeah, you have, to me, why not? I mean, their minimum value contracts with both these guys, there's no guarantees involved. McCollum can battle to be your backup center. Moon can battle to be your fourth outside linebacker, special teams guy. Why wouldn't you? Is the question, because there's really no risk involved in here with giving each a 1 year minimum exclusive rights tender.
Agreed. I think both will return, either tender or some equivalent, 1 year, very cheap contract. So here's my concern with all of this, Dave. It's quiet. It's too quiet. This feels like it was too easy of a list to put together in terms of guessing who will return and who will stay. And it rarely ever plays out in reality the way it does in our head before things get started. So what are we missing? What is the missing puzzle piece that's going to surprise us?
With this whole list that we just went through with the free agents, look, I don't think I've ever nailed 100%, an off-season list, at all. So, I think the questions do become, maybe we're both wrong on the quarterback. I don't know. Maybe they go Wilson and not Fields. Perhaps that is a question. Maybe they like Dante Jackson better than both of us. Maybe we differed on Mike Williams, but I mean, we're splitting hairs there because if a guy like that returns, it to me, it's a minimum value.
Could Daniels return? Is that a crazy thought? Even if it happened a little bit later in free agency, once he was maybe a month removed, a month healthier? Like, why would you not sign James Daniels back is the question.
I mean, he would have to make it to me. It feels like it would be a guy that would have to happen after the draft.
Okay, that's fair. And it may be, because I think teams will want to see where he's at physically and get more confidence before signing him at all. Make sure he can pass a physical.
I suppose you could look at this and say it's not an awful guard class top to bottom, especially with but there are a lot of questions about some of these tackles maybe having to kick inside. And the, it would all depend on his rehab and all that. I guess it's not crazy if he's still unsigned after the draft clears, but even so, there's other teams are going to look at it and say, okay, well, we didn't get a guard in the draft that we liked, and James Daniels seems to be rehabbing well, and we could put him right in there in our starting lineup, that kind of thing there. So I guess if you're looking at guys that could potentially fall through the cracks that we both have leaving, I suppose you could add them to that list.
Okay. I'm just thinking out loud, trying to see what we're missing. Because even in the comments of the post was like, Alex, great job. We agree, which never happens across the board like that. And that scares me whenever there is this universal agreement. I do think the quarterback situation is the one that could really pull the rug out from under us, because the local media, national media have all been leaning Fields, and it wouldn't shock me if it went the other way and all of a sudden we see a tweet from Pittsburgh. We have re-signed Russell Wilson to a new contract, and that becomes the big storyline. I don't want to become so hyper focused on just assuming that Fields returns. And again, Pittsburgh could want to re-sign Fields, and he may want to say, I'm going to go somewhere else because I'm either going to get paid more, or like the opportunity more, the coaching staff more, whatever the case is. Pittsburgh, it takes two to tango here. Pittsburgh may want to dance with Fields. If he does not want to, dance back, then that's up to him. And so Pittsburgh does not have all the leverage here. And they did not officially franchise tag, obviously, anybody. So Fields can walk out the door and Pittsburgh can do nothing about it.
Yep. You're right.
And that probably leaves them with Russell Wilson. So we'll see.
For the most part, I think we've hit, we're going to be right about a lot of these guys, as we usually are. The thing is, and once again, I'm trying to roll back through my head. I don't think I've ever correctly predicted an entire list. Now I know I've hit, 80% mark at least before when it comes to these, but there's always maybe one that goes another direction, maybe two.
Yeah, and trying to figure out what that one is. You're going to get most of this list right, but what's going to be that one surprise that you go, wow, didn't see that one coming? Or, yeah, in hindsight, I should have seen that be in the case of this guy leaving or this guy staying. And so we shall see. Does Landon Roberts go sign somewhere else? Are we just kind of assuming he returns? Does he get paid more somewhere else? I don't know. Maybe.
And might Calvin Anderson find work somewhere else, We both had him returning, not that it's a huge loss either way,
Yeah. I think if any of those marginal depth guys, leave, stay, it's hard to always really say, but any of the starting caliber, multi-year contract guys like Roberts, maybe Jackson, Daniels, the quarterbacks are the ones I'm really looking at wondering, okay, what am I missing here? Because it just feels too easy.
All right, your defensive free agent list will be out today?
Not today. It'll either be Thursday or Friday is my plan with my mock off season. Hopefully for Sunday, if not Monday, but I know Monday's kind of tough because then that's really when free agency, the tampering period begins. And so I don't like to try to compete against it. So I'm going to try for Sunday on the mock off season.
All right. Shall we get to some quick emails here?
Yeah, let's get to some read emails and close out today's show, Dave.
All right, buddy Brian Tellini back in the email machine. Happy Wednesday. He says the Steelers are in a unique situation of basically having nothing at quarterback right now. No offense to Mr. Skylar Thompson. Not only do we need to decide on our starter, we also have to decide on our backup quarterback. In my mind, we will be adding 2 quarterbacks via free agency and most likely another in the draft or as an undrafted free agent to battle out with Thompson in camp. How much should the starting quarterback that we choose influence the backup quarterback that we choose? If Justin Fields is a starting quarterback, wouldn't it be better scenario to bring in someone to back him up with similar play style like a Tyler Huntley or a Marcus Mariota rather than say a Joe Flacco? He says Flacco is a better quarterback but makes the transition from starter to backup a bigger change. Insert your own quarterback names. Just using this as an example, when your offense is based around a mobile quarterback and a lot of RPOs, having to switch your entire scheme and throw out a large part of the playbook playbook because of one injury doesn't seem to be setting yourself up with good insurance policy. I guess the question is how important do you feel it is to match the backup quarterback to your offensive scheme? And is it more important than just picking the best talent available? Brian, a good question. I see where you're going with all this, and didn't. Well, what specifically did Art Rooney say about this earlier in the offseason?
I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but the sentiment was he'd like the number one, number two to be stylistically similar so the offense wouldn't have to change if there ever was a change in quarterback.
Right. So, and that's kind of the dangerous assumption that we've gone with. And yeah, you would ideally want somebody along the same playing style of your starter in this. So yeah, I mean it definitely will make sense so that you could still run a good chunk of what what your offense is because of the same qualities, if you will, of the backup.
Yeah, now I do think whenever it comes to a draft pick, if you're going to invest in early draft pick, you don't focus on matching styles. You just find the best quarterback overall. For an early round guy, I think it matters more for the veteran, lower level, like Breeder mentioned, Snoop Huntley, Josh Dobbs, kind of a market. There is potentially value, like I said before, in a differing style for defenses to adjust mid-game. Mentioned before the Colts, from Richardson to Flacco. Pittsburgh had to adjust. They were late and Flacco had success. But I think generally most teams like to have the same style for their number one, number two, and I generally agree.
Right. Nathan writes in, it might be crazy to even suggest, but would an elite X route runner be what the Steelers need? Someone on a cheap prove it deal. Someone possibly named Deontay Johnson. I can't imagine he would cost even close to $5 million, he says. If he truly was willing to give it a go and be a team player, why not take a flyer? His league-wide value is rock bottom. The dude can separate with the best of them. Thoughts on this, he asked. First and foremost, Deontay Johnson's got 1 foot out of the league right now, right? He's some team is going to at least sign him. Now, what is his value? The only way I even consider bringing him back to Pittsburgh is I say, look, you got, and I tell him right up front, you got one foot out of the league. You're gonna have to change your attitude and all like that. You're not coming into a situation where you're guaranteed to play 700 snaps, and on top of it, you got to take this veteran benefit deal here. That is the only way I even consider Deontay Johnson back with the Pittsburgh Steelers.
I'm not even sure. Actually, I would say I get your point. And you're making the point of basically no chance Deontay comes back to Pittsburgh. I don't think I would even do that, though. I just have no interest. I was wondering where the email was going at first about what the crazy part is, and then he mentioned Deontay. I said, okay, there's the crazy part. I don't know. He went AWOL. I don't know what happened.
Mm-hmm.
It just totally just went crazy, and it's unfortunate. He's a super, super talented guy. I think he's a really hard worker. I think in some respects he'd gotten a bad rap in Pittsburgh, but they traded him for a reason.
Right.
It'd be pretty justified in that. I agree they need an X route runner is important. Pittsburgh should be looking for that, but not Deontay.
The only way, once again, he would have to, the Tiger would have to change his stripes, and he'd have to come back on a veteran benefit deal, and he'd have to keep his mouth shut and his nose down all summer. I mean, that's the only way I would even consider it.
Yeah, fair enough.
Let's see here. Max Land writes in Najee and JF2. He writes, can't deny Najee's reliability, consistency. Over the years, wouldn't be opposed to a relatively affordable contract for Harris to return if and only if Fields is quarterback one, he writes. Fields has some home run playability. He can turn the corner on the edges and score touchdowns when no receiver becomes open in the end zone, in the red zone. His breakaway speed is a major problem for defenses. Najee returns as a bruiser, as we have to keep our speed with Fields. Fields' legs are better, blah, blah, blah. Use our draft pick slated for a running back on corner, safety, depth, offensive line, or receiver. South Carolina safety is a freak who I'd take over every running back on the board, he says. And of course, Derek Harmon at 21. So would you consider Najee back on a relatively affordable contract if and only Justin Fields is quarterback number one?
No, I don't know what Fields has to do with bringing back Najee Harris or not, unless the idea is, well, Fields will produce enough splash in the run game that you don't need to get that from Najee. But I'm not content with just getting one playmaker. I want as many playmakers as possible. You can never have too many of those guys. So no, that really wouldn't change my opinion.
What did Mike Tomlin say about changes several months ago? Said there'll be changes going on at a lot of levels, right? Isn't that what Mike Tomlin said
Yeah,
middle of
it,
January?
basically, yeah, yeah.
What changes have happened so far, Alex?
I mean, I made a joke about it earlier this week, that meme about the Steelers not making changes. I mean, let's give them a couple more weeks because free
Sure.
agency has not even begun yet. So there's not been like a lot of opportunities to change your roster. But yeah, from a coach change standpoint, I didn't expect a bunch of wholesale changes. I didn't expect the changes that did occur with Grady Brown, who, by the way, apparently got hired by the Saints. Grady Brown did as an assistant there, and Aaron Curry. But yeah, so far the changes have been minimal, although there hasn't been a lot of opportunity to make changes so far.
Like up until this point, and look, it's hard to base anything on what has or hasn't happened up until now because free agency starting a new league year has not even happened. But if you were to quantify whatever changes have happened up until now, it's about the equivalent of just changing the color of your undershirt.
And the reporting from re-signing the quarterbacks to some of the other stuff is indicating that they're going to kind of run it back with a lot of the same pieces. But we'll see. Now there was that we never even mentioned it because it's so vague, but that Josina Anderson midnight tweet a couple days ago
What
about
was that about?
hearing some interesting changes will be coming. Did not specify, has provided no update on what that information is. What does that mean? We have a zero idea, but that caught some attention.
A little uncharacteristic for Josina. I have long been a Josina Anderson fan
Hmm.
over the years, dating back to her time covering the Broncos. She was always that one that could get certain players to talk and get information, and she still does get
Hmm.
some breaking news here. Very uncharacteristic of her to kind of uh, do something like that for engagement, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know the context of the situation. I'm she obviously was at the combine. I'm sure she heard some things, but what? And maybe we just have she threw a hot potato into our hands and told us to catch it and do something with it, and I don't know what to do with it.
Right. And circling this back to Najee, I mean, do, do people really want to see this thing rolled back with the same backfield? You know?
No, I'm strongly have seen the consensus is go bring somebody else in,
Right, right.
and I
I
agree.
mean, uh, and Najee's going to have some sort of market out. Well, will Najee, because of the Saquon Barkley deal, is Najee's value at least $10 million APY to some team with this draft class and all? Is he going to struggle to even get 10 million APY? Is he going to end up having to sign for what even the fifth year option would have been for him, six whatever million that was?
Man, Dave, I'm so torn on that. A rising tide lifts all boats, and so the Barkley deal is going to help elevate that. And even Henry may get a new contract now, and Josh Jacobs having success, the cap going up. It's not a great free agent class, but also the running back class in the draft is so darn good that's kind of going to help pull the value down. Because why go pay 10 million for a guy when you go draft somebody for a fraction of that and have a younger, cheaper option? So I think we'll be in that 8 to 10 million range is my guess. I hadn't spent a lot of time thinking about it. I've just kind of assumed that he'll be gone and whatever happens, happens. But I think he'll be in that 8 to 10. I think he'll have to jump Ramondre Stevenson, so he'll be above that.
Can he still for another team in the NFL gain 1,000 yards and get 6 touchdowns?
It's what he's done every single season. So yeah, absolutely.
Isn't that worth something?
I think what
Even with it, and I'm not suggesting the Steelers bring him back, but I'm
I
just
know
saying,
for any team.
for any team that has a good offensive line in place that can power run, and block it up better than he had in Pittsburgh. I mean, surely he's got some value in the NFL right now.
Sure. Well, here's where his value comes in. Never missed a game. in 4
Right.
years. Unheard of for the running back position. Doesn't fumble. That's also valuable. So there's ball security, there's availability, and in his best moments, he's been a really effective runner, a great power runner. And if he gets behind a good offensive line and a physical type of, run heavy system, he can have success. And I think have more success elsewhere than he had in Pittsburgh. He can still catch a little bit, he can block a little bit. He's well rounded, he's got size, and so that's where that value really lies. I think is in his durability, availability, and in the ball security.
Knowing what you know about him and his production so far, should they have at least put the 5th-year option on him now, and at least have him at their disposal at that 6 point whatever million mark?
I mean, last May, I was pretty critical of the team not doing that. And I thought it made a lot of sense to do it, to have that room under team control through the 2025 season. In hindsight, I think for a team that now urgently wants to get upgrades and with a running back class, maybe it all makes kind of sense for this to be the year that Najee parts. I don't know.
Right?
Is
Do
the
you, do you do you
option?
do you even want him at a minimum value? I mean, minimum value. I'd sign you for a minimum
Oh
value. I've
yeah.
said this several times, but I mean, uh, uh, you know, hindsight now, you know, would he even be a fit at $6 million? I guess.
is the
Are the Steelers the brilliant ones here?
is the 5th year option, is that fully guaranteed at exercising now? Right? Didn't they change that? Yeah, they changed that. The 5th year
Yeah,
option, if you picked it up, that was
yeah, yeah,
fully
yeah,
guaranteed.
yeah.
Okay, I'm just trying to map it out. Yeah, I mean, okay, I mean, it's a little Deontay Johnson like of okay, you made the smart move of maybe getting rid of this guy, but then how do you replace him? That's the other shoe that has to drop. And
Right.
so to call Pittsburgh maybe the smart ones, we'll have to see how, assuming Harris leaves, what the other option is that's brought in and how he performs for them to truly kind of take a victory lap on it. But in hindsight, yeah, I think you can now understand maybe why they declined the option.
Right. Right. I agree. I agree. But
Let me
at the
just
time, I was kind of wondering.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, I was the same, and I think Harris did enough to deserve the option, but we'll see where things go from here. I just wanted to take your temperature really quickly. There's been a little bit more chatter on Justin Fields, his potential contract market value. Joel Corey, who we both respect and have had on the show in the past from CBS Sports, producing an article with his contract packages. I guess they're kind of predictions or kind of what he thinks a player is worth. For Fields, he has 1 year, 12.5 million, worth up to 15 million with incentives, fully guaranteed at signing 12.5 million. That's kind of where he comes in on what Fields will get.
I missed that. Did that just happen?
Yeah, I know it just went up mid podcast here.
Well, for starters, the Steelers don't normally do up to deals.
Yeah,
So,
this is just for the NFL with any contract, I think.
man, Joel usually spot on with these things.
Yeah. I mean, I was coming in higher. Maybe that's wrong. I thought some of the $6 million projections that were out there just felt way too low. Maybe the in between is where it comes in at. In Pittsburgh, at least, I know that Joel's making this just kind of as his general thought. What is your value? But Pittsburgh wants to do at least a 2 year deal, right? Art Rooney said they
I would
want to
think
get a
so.
guy
Yeah.
multi-year to not have this year to year. We don't have a quarterback under contract nonsense. So 2 years, 25 million, 26 million is kind of maybe that to extrapolate it out.
Yeah. You would probably have to, let's see, if it was, let's say it's a $13 million per deal, you'd probably have to give him 15 million total for 2025 to get him to sign.
Okay.
Let's say that's I don't know, $10 million signing bonus.
So most
Uh,
of that's guaranteed. Well,
well,
no,
I
you
mean
map it out better.
the first year, yeah. I mean
Yeah.
the signing bonus and the base salary. So let's say, okay, let's say it's a 2 year, $26 million deal.
Okay.
You'd probably have to give him a total of base and signing bonus of around 15 million, assuming that that's his market value,
Hmm.
to get him to sign. Let's say the signing bonus was 10 million and the base salary was 5. That would put a cap number around 10 million on him. And
Okay.
then the second year, the cash would be what, 11 million?
I got
Yeah,
distracted to do the math,
and
but
he'd
trust you.
probably insist on having a roster bonus as part of that. So maybe a $3 million roster bonus, $8 million base salary for 2026 to force a decision on him.
Do you think he'd want that kind of structure? Do you think he'd want to take the 1-year deal and keep trying to prove himself to then cash in? Because that's pretty still small money for a quarterback, the way quarterbacks get paid these days.
Well, that's why I say demand the option bonus so he forces the hand for that second year.
Yeah, but if he plays well, they exercise it. Now he's a super cheap quarterback for.
Yeah.
I mean, he could obviously then just try to work out a long-term deal then, and
But any team that's going to want him this offseason is probably going to want him for multiple years, right?
I could see some teams doing a 1-year deal if there's other quarterbacks on the roster, other options. I don't think Pittsburgh wants to go down that road because they just went down that road uniquely to have all their quarterbacks on 1-year deals for 2024.
Okay.
I don't know. Just wanted to get his projection. Also, he has one for Najee Harris, and it's basically what you had said. Maybe I'll just read the contract. He projects 3 years, $30 million, fully guaranteed at signing $15 million, so half of that contract, $10 million per year.
And what did I put him at last year prior to the start of the league year? Almost 11.
I think it was right around 10, 11. Yeah, so I think you're right in line there. So that's his projection for Harris, which I think seems reasonable. I said 8 to 10 million. He's at 10.
All right. Well, let's see. What's the quarterback market right now? Gardner Minshew's no longer on the list at 12.5 million. And we talked about, let's see, Sam Darnold's no longer on the list either. So you have a gap from Caleb Williams at 9.871 to Geno Smith at 25 million. That's the gap there.
Yeah, and I think Fields will fall in between that. Obviously, you're going from Williams, number 1 overall rookie deal, to Geno Smith, really the lowest paid full-time starting quarterback in the NFL. Where does Fields fall in? I still think, does he get less than Gardner Minshew got last year? Is a really hard. Like, I know Minshew had a decent year with the Colts. It's just hard to believe that with the cap going up.
All right. So what if you put him at 13 million?
Yeah, maybe because maybe it's 2 years, 26 million. Then
2 years, 26 million, 15 million in. I mean, look, it's hard to go against a guy like Joel Corey.
Yeah. And maybe Pittsburgh comes in slightly above that average yearly value because they won't do the incentives. And so their average yearly value has to come in a little above that to entice Fields to take that type of contract without incentives.
Right. But if I'm Fields and if there's any other offers out there, comparative to it, I definitely would want a roster bonus in March of 2026 to force a team to make a decision on me.
Here's a concern. Let's say Pittsburgh, we assume, will offer a 2-year deal. Is that fair to say?
I would think so, yeah.
What if he gets a similar average yearly value, but a 1-year deal from, say, the Jets? Do you take the 1-year deal and bet on yourself and hope to cash in for next offseason? I think if you're Fields, that's tempting, yeah.
I would consider it.
Because if you're a 2-year deal and you have a great season, again, you can try to then work extension. But then, there's franchise tag concerns too.
He could go the other way too, though. And
but
obviously,
but players bet on themselves.
Right. And look, even a 2-year deal in Pittsburgh, if it's structured the way we think it's structured, it's dependent on how he plays in 2025 because he could be out the door, especially if there's a roster bonus involved. If he doesn't play well, you're not going to keep him around for even a cash total of $13 million or whatever, 11 million.
Right.
Yeah.
But he's not thinking like that. He's thinking, what if I have a great season, go crush it, and then I'm under contract for $13 million next year, and I'm getting severely underpaid in my prime years.
Right.
And I can have another good season to justify that value. So that's kind of a new fear I just unlocked, Dave, that Pittsburgh offers a competitive 2-year deal, but he takes a 1-year deal elsewhere to bet on himself for next offseason.
Yeah, let me pull that up and read it real quick.
Corey, I can send you the link. You need the link, Dave? All right, let me send it to you. Just 1 second here as I finagle my phone. But we always respect what Joe Corey has to say, so I will send that to you. It is sent into your DMs, sliding into your DMs over there, Dave.
Let me see what it says here.
I think it's like couple names down the page because he is it for a bunch of free agents and tag guys. He's got projections for Darnold, for Trey Smith, for T. Higgins.
What's he
I
got
know.
for Godwin here? He's got 3 years. Ooh, wow. Would the Steelers even want to compete
What
at
does he have for Godwin?
25? He's got Chris Godwin, 3 years, 75 million, 25 million per. How surprising would you be if the Steelers got involved with that?
I mean, they should. They can't pinch pennies here. They have the money. The concern is just over the fractured ankle and kind of worries that health wise. But if Tampa Bay is comfortable signing him, then maybe they're going to be willing to give that kind of money because they know where he's out. They've tracked his whole health and rehab process.
All right. Let's see. Yeah, you got it here just as you read it. 12.5 million 1 year for Justin Fields, worth up to 15 million with incentives. Overall guarantees 12.5 million. So in other words, he's thinking the whole thing would be guaranteed for 1 year, guaranteed at signing 12.5 million. And to kind of offset that with the up to amount and all like that, we're thinking maybe 13 or 14 million probably.
Yeah, so he likens it to what Darnold got in Minnesota last year on that 1 year, $10 million deal that I think had a bunch of up to incentives and language, but a little above that to I'm sure reflect the salary cap. Is Fields comparable to Darnold where he was last year?
Feels like it. Yeah.
Here's where
Similar.
it's similar. First round pick didn't work out, bounced around a bit, but here's where I struggle. In Darnold threw 46 passes in 2023 before signing with Minnesota. He started one game. Fields started 6 games, went 4-2, had the rushing production. He played a whole lot more than Darnold did the past 2 years in 2022 with the Panthers in 2023. So I think, and again, with the salary cap going up, how does Fields get right around what Darnold got, given that Fields played more, played relatively well in a world where the cap's now 20 million plus higher?
Okay, fair point. There's no way you'd fully guarantee 2 years for Fields, right?
No, I wouldn't do that. But I'm just thinking like average yearly value perspective of just what that number, which I know is just one data point and guarantees matter more and structure matters a lot. But I don't know. Maybe I've been too hot on the Fields market. But like if there's going to be multiple teams competing for him, does that not drive up his price tag?
You would think so. I mean, who else is out there that's going to be on the free agent market?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Darnold and Aaron Rodgers, first and foremost, and I guess Russ to some degree, right?
Sure. And if Darnold resigns in Minnesota, which is possible, that's going to increase the value for everybody else.
And then who else is out there that's worth serious money? I mean, what's a guy like Jameis going to get? 5 million, 6 million, maybe?
Yeah, he's not signing to start Jameis Winston. He may be a number 2, maybe compete a little bit, maybe be in the position Fields was coming into Pittsburgh this year, not pole position, understudy. But there's no one else out there. Like, who are these teams going to get a quarterback? The Giants, the Browns, the Raiders, the Titans. Like, these teams need quarterbacks. You got to start somebody. So,
right.
I don't know. We'll see.
All right. We'll still wait for an outcome there. Okay, about 2 hours here as usual, so we should wrap it up. You can follow me on Twitter/X at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button up right, navigational bar. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the ad-free button and follow the directions that way. Alex and I will be back on Friday. We'll have a lot of different things to talk about thanks to the news cycle, and we'll probably go over Alex's defensive free agent list at some point between now and Monday as well too. So until then, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.